G'day guys, my name is Alex. Welcome to another episode of The Tripod and Punting 101. Today it's going to be a relatively short video. Hang on a second, what I'm going to do here actually, I just want to share this vid into our group and then we'll just get started. Shouldn't take too long. I'll just get this one done and then we can move on. Bear with me here, lads, and then we'll be back up and running. Alright, very good. I think I've got it sorted. Okay, guys. So today, what I'm going to basically go through is some situational spots in the NBA and what to look for on a daily basis. Look, we haven't handed out that many NBA tips this season, and that's just because we've been obviously a bit more busy and more focused on the NFL, but I did just want to go through what I essentially look for if I'm looking for NBA plays. I know, I gave out a multi yesterday that got up at $4.50, and some people, were saying, what the fuck, you're betting the Wizards, like, that's absolutely insane. Gave out another one today that just fell short, but a lot of people were saying, what the fuck, why are you taking the Heat against the Celtics? And I did just want to, I'm obviously not right all of the time, but I feel like this is a bunch of seven things that you can look for every day, and this will take you less than 7 minutes. I think it does for me anyway. This will take you less than 7 minutes to go through every single game on the slate. Obviously, it might take a little bit longer if there's like 10 plus games, but if there's single digit games, this will take you less than 7 minutes, and it will give you a gauge of which team to bet on and which teams not to bet on. NBA is a great sport for situational betting. Sports like the NFL, the NRL, you do get good situational spots, but you don't get nearly as many, just because there is only, every team's only playing one game per week, so there's a lot more rest. You get a standard 7-day rest most of the time. Obviously, in NFL, there's sometimes good situational spots if you're getting a team that played, a Monday night game, turning around and having to travel to play the Thursday night game, or something like that. But you get a ton more in the NBA. There's 82 games in a season. You get teams playing back-to-backs with travel. You get teams playing 3 games in 4 nights, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot more situational spots to look out for in the NBA. Now, I'm going to go through 7 things that I look for that I do very quickly when I look at each game. It can be done very simply. And the 7 things that I'm going to go through, just write them down, or you can watch it again or whatnot. And after I've gone through those 7 things, essentially what I do for each game is I give a team a rating on their situational spot. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be neutral. And if I get a good situational spot team against a bad situational spot team, then I'm obviously going to lean towards that team, and then you can deep dive and do a bit more research. But generally, if you go through these 7 steps, you might be leaning to a certain team, and if they're in a bad situational spot after you've done this, and they're playing a team in a neutral or a good situational spot, it might help you to stay off them. So I'll get started anyway. Number 1, and this is very easy to do. So before I start, all of these 7 things, you don't need fancy statistical models or anything. This is how I do it. It's very simplistic, but it's very easy for you guys to do at home as well. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the slate, you're going to get out your laptop, you're going to get out your phone, you're going to Google search the team, the team name, and then you're going to press a little button that brings up their previous games, and it's going to go forever, but you're only going to want to focus on the last 6 to 10 games. So just Google search Boston Celtics in one tab, they're playing the Heat, Google search the Miami Heat in the other tab, and then you're going to look for these 7 things. Number 1, you want to look for back-to-back spots with travel. It's an extremely bad spot in the NBA. I know a lot of, you might just look and say, oh, look, it's only their first game away. They played at home last night. But if it's a back-to-back spot with travel, that's generally going to be a bad spot for a team. In that kind of situation, you also want to look at where they had to travel from and where they're traveling to. If it's East Coast to West Coast, you can see that, familiarize yourself with an American map, and then you can tell if it's a back-to-back spot with travel, it's certainly a bad spot. Similarly bad is 3 games in 4 nights. I know the NBA's kind of cut down on this, and you do find this a lot less in the NBA, but it's very easy to see. You just look at a team's last 2 games. When were they? It'll tell you. Were they on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? You just have a look at that. You can see very easily if they're playing their 3rd game in 4 nights or not. There's rarely ever chances now where you get a team playing 4 games in 5 nights. You used to get that a little bit back in the day, and that used to be an absolute goldmine, but the NBA's kind of changed the schedule so you don't get that too much. So number 1 is just look for teams on back-to-back spots with travel, and also teams playing 3 games in 4 nights, especially if that includes travel as well. Oh, yep. Also, I guess I would also put into that number 1 category there, just travel in general. So what I do like to go through is to look at a team's maybe last 6 games or something like that, and just see how much travel they've had to do in those last 6 games. So if they've had, a bunch of those games at home, that's probably not, that is a good spot for them. But if a team's had to go, home, away, home, away, home, away, you can see that fairly easily, and just see how much travel there's been, maybe in the last week or so for that team, because obviously you want to bet on a team that's had as minimal travel as possible in the last kind of week to 10 days. Number 2 trend that I do like to look at as well is a team that's obviously playing their 4th or 5th home game in a row. Generally, this is a great trend to look for later on in the season when teams are getting a little bit more fatigued. You can see that fairly easily if you do the Google search. This will take you 5 seconds. The home team's always on top, so you just do a quick scroll. Oh shit, this team's playing their 5th game at home. Maybe the other team's playing their 3rd road game or whatever. But generally, you'd want to bet, especially late in the season, bet on a team that's playing their 3rd, 4th, 5th home game in a row. They're not going to be as tired. They're more used to their hoop, their court, the crowd, that sort of thing. So generally, teams do play better the longer stretches that they have at home. The exact opposite is true for away teams. You want to look at teams that are playing their 3rd, 4th, 5th game in a row away from home. That's a lot of travel, a lot of tired legs, not sleeping in your own bed. Generally, I do look to fade those teams that are playing their 3rd, 4th, 5th game in a row away from home. Okay, number 3 is what I look for is if a team is on a big road trip, let's say it's a 3-game, 4-game, 5-game road trip, generally speaking, what teams try to do in the NBA is go 500 or better on their road trips. So basically win half their games or more on their road trip. So so if they've got a 4-game road trip, generally a team's aim will be to go 2-2 on that road trip. If a team's got 6 road games in a row, generally their aim will be to go 3-3. If they've got 3 road games in a row, they'll try and go 2-1. So they try and go 50% or better on their road trip, and that's a win for them. So what I try and look for is if a team's had a long road trip and they're playing their very last game away from home, you want to check and see, okay, this is a team's 5th road game. It's their very last one. They're 2-2. They are going to go hard out to get over 500. Or if maybe they're 1-2 on their road trip, they'll play very, very hard in that final road game to try and get a 500 record for that road trip. It's a little known secret in the NBA that is what teams try to do. That's their aim on their road trips, is to go 500 or better. So that's another thing to look out for. If it's the last game on a team's road trip, just have a look at their record for that road trip and then decide what their motivation will be for that final game. A team might have 4 road games in a row and they've already gone 3-0. In that case, I would probably look at that team and think, maybe the coach and the players won't be as motivated for that 4th game because they've already gone 3-0 on that road trip in particular. Number 4. So I've got written down here the first road game after a long home stint. So basically what this means is I always look, and you can see this, once again, it's all on the Google. When you just type it in, you'll be able to see all the games. I always try and fade a team that's playing their first road game after a long stint at home, especially in the first half. And the reasoning behind it is, once a team has had a long stretch at home, let's say 4 or 5 or even 6 games in a row at home. They're used to the court. They're used to the bounce of the floor. They're used to shooting on their own hoops, the altitude, the crowd, all that kind of thing. You get used to it. Then your very first game on the road is often when you struggle. It's a new environment, it's a new hoop, it's a new court, the ball bounces differently, the ball flies differently through the air, and it takes a while to get used to that. And you're used to your home court because you've been there for fucking a week to a week and a half. So I always look to fade teams that are going on the road for the first time in a long time. The exact same is true if you have a team on a long road trip. So let's say that's been on the road for 5, 6, 7 games in a row, and then they come back home. I always look to fade a team after that. And it's not the same reason as prior. It's a combination of reasons. Obviously, they've been on the road for very long. The legs are fatigued. It takes effort. It drains you traveling. But not only that, you've been on the road for fucking 10 days, 14 days sometimes. You come home, what's the first thing that you want to do? You don't want to play basketball again. You want to see your family. Your family's going to want to see as much of you as they possibly can. You've been on the road for 2 weeks, so you get stuck doing family shit. Your head's not in the game, and often when a team comes home, especially a team comes home after a long road trip, they come out very, very sluggish in that next game, especially in the first half. So for number 4, for both those ones, for the first road game after a long home stretch, and the first away game. Sorry, the exact opposite. The first home game after a long road trip, I always look to fade that team in the first half and also for the game. Number 5, this is a fairly simple one that I have gone through before. I look to fade teams playing in Denver and in their game after they've played in Denver. And the reason being is Denver is one of arguably the toughest place to play in the NBA. Very, very high altitude. A lot of teams aren't used to playing in that high altitude, and if you've ever been in high altitude, it's hard to exercise, it's hard to breathe, your fucking chest tightens up, and you get tired very quickly if you're not used to it. So I always look to play against teams that are playing in Denver, especially in the second half. So if you can get on at half time, maybe teams that aren't used to it will often fade in the altitude in Denver in the second half, and likewise, sometimes when you've been in altitude and played a game, the effects sort of trickle down over the next few days. So I do really like to fade a team after they're just coming back from Denver, and whoever they are, they're going to have to travel as well. So it's going to be a back-to-back. Traveling from Denver is an absolutely horrible spot to play a team in. Number 6, and I did want to touch on this one especially because it was only 2 days ago that I gave out the multi where I took the Wizards to beat Philly, and I also mentioned that I liked the Grizzlies to beat San Antonio. Both of those teams were $2.35 or higher underdogs. Both those teams had played each other the game before. Actually, I think the Wiz played Philly the game before, and the Grizz played the Spurs 2 games prior. So number 6 is a back-to-back with revenge or recent revenge. Basically, there's 82 games in a season. You do quite often get games where teams play each other on back-to-back nights, one home, one away. I can't remember exactly what they call it. They just call it like a home-away type thing. But basically, in the span of 2 days, they play each other. They play each other again. Every single time, your first inclination should be, let's take, for example, the Philadelphia Wizards game. Philly pumped them the game before. Your first inclination should always be to take the team that lost. It's a very, very strong trend in the NBA, not only on back-to-back games where they play each other straight away after, but if they've played each other in the last week, always look to play on the team that lost the previous matchup. And obviously it worked a couple of days ago. Philly blew out the Wizards, then we got on the Wizards blew out Philly. The Spurs absolutely demolished the Grizzlies. 2 games later, the Grizz turn around and beat the Spurs by 10 points. It's a very, very strong trend in the NBA. And then number 7, I'd like to touch on this one as well, is just quickly, we've mentioned this as well in all sorts of sports, but it's probably more prevalent in the NBA just because of the number of games that teams play throughout the season. It's just losing streak theory and winning streak theory. Basically, losing streak theory just means that if a team goes on a huge losing streak, and one team that I can think of is the Phoenix Suns. I think they may have even lost double-digit games in a row at this point. So if you get a team like the Suns that have lost like 10 in a row, what you do is you don't look to back them. You wait until they finally break that losing streak, and then you look to back them the game after. And why is this such a strong trend in the NBA? It's because when a team is losing for ages, they're down in the dumps, they're down on themselves, they have no confidence, and there's a lot of pressure on them to get off that losing streak. Once they get that first win, they've got a lot of pressure off their shoulders, they've finally got that win, and they come out the next game and they play with a little bit more confidence. So look to play on a team the game after they snap their losing streak. And the exact opposite is true for winning streak theory. If you get a team that's gone on a 15, 16 game win streak, and then they finally lose, I always look to fade them the following game. And the reason being is, once you're on that winning streak, you're brimming with confidence, you're playing well, and you want to keep that winning streak going. So you're trying every single game. Get one more win, get one more win. And once that streak is broken, it's exactly the same thing. It's like, the weight's off my shoulders. We don't have to go hard out every single game from now on. We don't have to go hard out in the next game. And what you'll find is these teams that go on 15-game win streaks, they'll go and they'll lose 2 in a row. For a team like the Suns, let's say, that's lost double digits in a row, don't look to back them while they're on that losing streak. But once they win a game, let me tell you, that next game is the one to back them in. That's it. That's number 7, guys. So look, all of these, honestly, you can go through the whole slate in 7 minutes. You just hop on Google, type in both the teams, just scroll through, look through all those 7 things. You can do it in a matter of minutes, and then you just basically assign every single team a good, bad, or neutral rating based on their situational spot. That's not the be-all or end-all. You could get a team in a good situational spot versus a team in a bad situational spot. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bet them. It just means that you probably aren't betting the other team, that's for sure. You want obviously a bunch of factors to be in your favour to make a bet, but certainly having an advantage in the situational spot will lead you to finding the right team to bet on, essentially. So that'll do it for this week, guys, but make sure you tune in tomorrow morning. I am actually going to be riding solo for tomorrow's NFL pod. I actually think I'm going to be doing it a little bit earlier tomorrow. I've got a bunch of shit to do, so I'm probably going to roll with the NFL pod by myself at about 8 a.m. Queensland time tomorrow morning. So I've deep dived the games this afternoon. I'll search for the best lines tomorrow morning, and I'll roll at about 8 a.m. Queensland time. So tune in then, guys, and have a good weekend, and hopefully we win some more money on the NFL this weekend. 8-1 last week, so let's keep it going. See you then.